Alrighty. Well, in the morning, Cumuloville. It's the last Thursday of the month, so it's time for this town to get down with another Qumulo webinar. Coming at you live from the shadow of Cheyenne Mountain, I'm Will Stroh. And joining me today is the man behind Birds Aren't Real, Michael Bird himself. We are going to be going over what's new with Q today, covering the last two quarters. There's a couple of high points out there that probably you should be aware of. I know a lot of them have been on some RFEs. Well, not a lot of them. A couple of them have been on some RFEs for quite some time, and I'm glad to see they finally came around. I expect things to go pretty speedy. So if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out in the Q&A. But, a lot of it is, I don't want to say I'm reading you the release notes, but effectively it's, here's what's in the release notes with some color commentary. So feel free to ask questions out there, and I'll use some advanced AI and a set of crayons to try and generate you some answers. So right off the bat, like I said, this is the last two quarters. We do these about twice a year. So we cover half, the previous two quarters, etc. So if you're curious what happened before 750, go look at the last webinar there, and that thing will have it covered out there. Coming from 750, there is only one platform release out there. Now, as you hopefully know, or if you're new to Qumulo, if you don't know, these will require a full or rolling reboot. How long that's going to take is completely up to how busy the system is. If you do a full reboot, my ballpark is about 10 minutes, mostly due to some of the systems that really like to show their post screen out there. But by and large, it's typically around the 5 minute mark, I'd say, for any of the Qumulo branded Aero platforms or Supermicros. If you do the rolling reboot route, one thing to keep in mind out there is that data still will be served while the rolling reboot takes place. So any of those connections will roll over to existing nodes. So for example, when node 1 goes down, any connections on node 1 roll to nodes 2, 3, 4, depending on how many floating IP addresses you have and how many nodes to share those. What that means is because you have that data still coming in, when the system comes back up, it is going to go through a reprotect and restriper or in a rebalance act out there. So that can take time and add on additional time. So if you do have a limited window, I'm always going to say do the full if you can take it. If you don't, then we got to go the rolling reboot route. Just speaking from experience, and I think I mentioned on here before, I was doing a rolling reboot with a customer once. They were a live streaming TV platform. They had, I want to say it was in the neighborhood of 75 nodes. But we had so much data coming in during that 10 minutes that each node was offline, it would take upwards of 45 to 50 minutes to go ahead and do the reprotect afterwards. So you can see real quick, you're taking basically an hour per node at that point. So you can do the math, 75 hours. It was not a quick operation. So again, if you can take it, I will always say, if you have the full outage, or if you have an outage window, just take the full outage on there and get by that. If you are looking to stay outside of the platform window there, then 7641 is going to be the one you want to go to. But obviously, just go to nexus.qmulo.com, generate the path out there. It'll show you what you need to do, any hops. Again, as always, you'll need to hit anything with a 0 as the third digit out there, or these big green check boxes if you want to look at it that way. So 7801, 7702, 602, and so forth. Donkeys. So let's jump into what's actually out here. The 7.5 chain, specifically 7552, probably brought the biggest bang for the buck of most customers. So let's just jump right to that guy. That's the ability to set a preferred domain controller out there. Historically, we would tell you that you need to set up sites and services, and that works perfectly fine. It works exactly how it should. And for numerous reasons, that's either difficult to do and maintain, it's not run by the same department as the storage department, Sometimes the AD guys simply don't want to set it up. They're like, no, that's fine. We're not going to do that. And where this really bites you is when you have these larger corporations that have domain controllers all over the place, or you have, I don't know, pick your company du jour today, buying up little companies left and right, and it's just sucking in these other domain controllers, hurdy gurdy wherever they happen to be. So you end up in a situation where if they're all in the same little bundle there, you could be sitting out in, I don't know, let's say Houston, Texas, and be trying to talk to a domain controller in Singapore because no one bothered to set up sites and services. Obviously, that can generate some issues. So again, the historical path forward was always set up sites and services. With 7552, you can actually go in there and do things via the CLI to set specific domain controllers. And because this is such a big one that so many customers have asked about, let me jump over here real quick just to show you where you're pulling this from. If you're doing it, if you're already in the AD, then what you do is the AD reconfigure here and give it the goods, and then domain dash domain controllers is where you're going to want to throw things into. And again, it's just going to be a comma separated list out there. So DC1, comma DC2, comma DC3. You can read through the details here, but in short, we're going to go for that first one anytime we can find it. And then after that, if we can't talk to that one, we'll roll to the next one and so forth. So the other two big line items that came out with this are really repetitive through the rest of the releases up to 781, which is a focus on CDF, the Cloud Data Fabric, which if you have questions about, talk to your SE, talk to your folks in channel. We can get that going up and running for you. If you look at last month's webinar, we talked about it there in regards to GCP. But it's one of the common things that you're going to see going forward with improvements happening on that pretty much every release. Likewise with S3, moving things into the cloud realm there. And a large portion of that is, I would like to say we can take credit on timing it perfectly, but we can't. But if you do look at the state of the world right now, as far as components are concerned, prices are going up. What was it? Last month, I'd heard from a customer that they had, in December of last year, they had got a quote for, I want to say it was 8 nodes. And I'm totally going to be making up numbers here because I don't recall them exactly, but let's say it was $100,000. And then 2 months later, they asked again, and now it was like $600,000. So prices are going crazy right now. So having things like CDF with its hub and spoke possibilities out there, as well as putting things up in the cloud and making it someone else's problem to source that hardware, it's a nice little thing to have in your back pocket, even if it's just for temporary use to get by until prices come back down, which we all know they will. We've seen this before. Just don't buy at the high and sell at the low, or however that works in the stock market. So lots of changes out there within those releases. If you're looking for something specific that's not called out, by all means, go to look at the release notes, which we put here on the feature log. Go ahead and take a look at those guys, but lots of things on that front. All right, with the 762 realm, again, we'll focus on those key points there of CDF, which is the portal and the hub and spoke portals, and S3. So we're allowing you to set privacy policy, configuring a whole bunch of portal directories out there, and we now have the read and write lease operations with SMB, which makes things a lot faster out there. Additionally, as a little data point, we now have this thing called Edge Connect, where you can set a single node out there on the edge of your network. And they put a lot of thought into that name, I guess. But outside of that, if that is something you're interested in, I would again point you to your SE because they'll be able to see if this is a good arrangement for your workflows. From the CS side, we can walk you through it, but again, without having those intimate details of where you're coming from, it's really a lot of that's going to be pure speculation at that point as far as whether or not this is a good fit for you guys. But it is something to keep in mind. Now, with single node, keep in mind you're not going to be getting something like a 6.4 erasure coding or some great performance hits out there. You know, you would technically be spindle bound because you only have so many drives in the system. Additionally, you know, should something go wrong there, the end result is going to be more likely than not is going to be just simply redeployment. As I recall, I believe those are virtual machines out there, not physical ones, but it is something to keep in mind that, you know, it is there for a specific reason, not simply to go off and put Qumulo on every accounting person's desk because you can. While my stock would love that if you certainly bought a 4-node cluster for every person in accounting, that's probably not a good use of company resources. So, something to keep in mind there. Possibilities exist. Again, like I said, talk to your SEs if you have any questions on those guys, and they'll be able to make sure it's a good fit for you. Rolling along into the 7.2 or the 7.7 change. So, a couple things out here. This %U thing is one that a lot of customers have asked for. I would say it's second only to the preferred domain controller ability out there. It's for things that have come about. So if that is something you're interested in, if that's something you've been looking forward to, by all means, get an upgrade in the kitty there and go for it. Likewise with the replication when processing directories. So the way Qumulo replication works is we have what are called threads out there. And these threads, by default, you have 16 of them, which basically means 16 things, be it directories, files, whatever. So when we go to process these, what we historically did was only read forward so many of these at a time and throw those up into the queue. With this change, it brings about a lot. We go off and read a lot more of these in advance. I want to say it was something to the tune of 100,000, but I could be totally wrong on that one. But there was definitely a 1 in the number. 9 times out of 10, this will work perfectly fine for you, and it will actually speed up your replication. If you happen to be that unfortunate victim that is the 10% out there, you will see your replication start to slow. And that's simply due to the way the directory structure works and how things are laid out. If you do encounter that, fear not. We can always roll it back to the previous method, which will get your replication back just as it was before. But you know, there may be some suggestions for changes on how either to lay out the data itself so that it becomes a little more speedy in that sense. Or, you know, it may just be a case where you need to stick with that old method, which is fine. Going forward, you don't have to be concerned with it reverting back to this new method. It is a tunable, and those tunables will stay with you as you go forward. So from that perspective, it's a one and done fix. Alrighty. And pulling up on the tail end here, again, going with portal stuff. This portal log synchronization, it is a massive, massive win as far as getting the portal flushes out there. So again, if you are interested or are already utilizing the Cloud Data Fabric, I'm going to highly, highly recommend you get up to 7801 and see what it can do for you, because I would be amazed if you don't see changes out there in the good way. So that would be a big a big push for anyone who is on the fence, wondering, do I need to go to the latest and greatest? Well, if you're typically we'll say if it's not broken, don't bother with it. But if you are using one of these technologies that we're wildly focused on right now, that would be a good one to go to. Also, with this S3 support, apparently this is something that's pretty popular among the kids these days. I myself don't know, but I'll take their word for it because we see a lot of them. So if that is something you're using with the streaming AWS 4, you'd want to go ahead and get upgraded on that as well. Okie dokies. So, like I said, this is going to be really quick, and we're kind of at the tail end of things here. So, if you do have any questions about any of this, by all means, go ahead, reach out to the channels, reach out to your SCs, etc. If you didn't know already, we are out there on Reddit, so feel free to pop over there, ask questions as well. Right now, it's predominantly me dropping pictures of my dogs and one-liners about once a week out there for little tips and tricks. So if you're interested in those, it's also a good place to go. Sometimes we'll get reposts from the Dear Grumpquat column because that guy's a jerk, but we got to give him some credit somewhere. I mean, he's just grumpy, I guess, not really a jerk. But he will get his postings out there as well. So if those are things that you find useful or interesting, by all means, go out there. Now, the one last thing I do want to say is next month, replication to the cloud. So we started this off talking about how things such as Cloud Data Fabric and moving things up into the S3 land were great because hardware is hard to come by. Well, this is also a valuable resource as well because maybe I don't want to spend the money on hardware or in my data center simply for replication at that point. So if this is of interest to you, if you're looking for, say, a third offsite backup option, because I know everyone on this phone has already a backup option that's not on site and is a totally different state, time zone, country, whatever, because that's the way all sysadmins work. But if you want a third one, I highly recommend tuning in next month. We are going to be walking through doing a replication up to the cloud, get things rolling there. My guess is we'll probably be using GCP for it just because it's a little bit easier to throw out there. But if you have any hard stops with using GCP, maybe your environment only lets you use Azure, maybe it only lets you use OCI, throw a comment out there on the Reddit channel or kick something into your channels and say, hey, it'd be great if we could see this as an Azure lineup just so we know that it works. But again, it goes back to the fact that Qumulo runs perfectly fine in the cloud as it does on-prem. The exact same code base. And it's pretty straightforward and simple. So, alrighty, folks. Hopefully this was somewhat useful. Maybe not. If not, my name is Michael Bird. If it was useful, my name's Will Stroh. And if there's no questions out there, and it looks like there aren't, we'll go ahead and just let you get back some time. You don't have to tell your boss that we didn't take the full hour. That's totally up to you. And we'll let you get back to doing whatever you're doing out there. Alrighty, folks, if you got any questions on upgrades, by all means, feel free to ask them out there, and we'll get you pointed in the right direction. If you are interested in getting Cloud Data Fabric, even just trying it out, let us know. We can get that going for you, tell you what it's all about, what you need to know on that one. And if nothing else, then we'll see you next month. We're going to do some replication to the cloud and make things break out in the cloud land. All right, folks, take care out there. And if you see any talking dogs, be sure to feed them tacos.